Now, we talk all the time about how to get your ecom store to the point where it's doing over 6 figures per month with revenue. But in this video, what I want to do is talk about the biggest factors that are actually going to make it harder for you to get to that point, and the things that you really have to get through, especially sometimes mentally, to be able to scale your store and make the first 100K per month from Google, or get it to the point where Google's contributing enough to get your store to 7 figures per month, which is what we do for our clients. Now, the first thing that you need to do is get over the fear of overlapping traffic. A lot of people avoid Google because they feel that it's a platform that just kind of feeds off of warm traffic. And there's definitely some element of that's true. We consider it a bit of a necessary evil, which I'll talk about in a second. But there's very, very specific ways you can scale Google into specifically cold traffic. That being said, you usually want to protect your traffic because of how competitive ecom is in the world of the amount of stores that have similar products, people stealing your traffic. It's very, very common. Usually the cost of protecting your traffic is much lower than the revenue you'll gain from protecting the traffic. So very, very important. You have to understand that if you're going to run Google ads and Facebook ads at a very high level and get to the point where you're getting multiple 6 figures from each channel, you have to accept that there's always going to be some level of overlap. There's different ways to track that too, right? You can have platforms like Wicked Reports, Triple Whale that's going to have that multi-channel attribution, which makes it a little easier to avoid. But I will guarantee you, and we see this all of the time with our bigger clients, if you're trying to scale to the point of 7 figures and above, you're going to have to accept that overlap. So it's definitely something to get over. You don't want to just exclude a channel because you feel like it's going to feed off warm traffic. We talk about how to scale into cold traffic. But like I said, most brands that get to the point where they're doing multiple or high 7 figures per month, they're going to deal with that overlap and just accept it as part of the omnipresent strategy. Next is getting away from your ego when it comes to your store. A lot of people have this big ego with their store and they don't accept the fact that not all traffic is going to necessarily convert on the Google side. Because when it comes to Google, you're bidding directly for product terms that are specific to your product. And most people feel they have an amazing product, so those terms should convert. But sometimes there's other variables. Sometimes there's a very high level of competition on Google, and not everything's going to convert how you want it to be. So the biggest thing you want to do is make sure to cut off stuff that's not working quickly, because there's definitely going to be other avenues to scale into. At some point, you of course will want to get back to those areas and figure out why they're having a hard time converting. But you don't want to continuously just go after the same targeting just because you think it should convert because you have a great product. Because chances are there's going to be some variable, which you'll figure out later, that will help you convert those terms, but it's just not a high leverage action right in the moment. You want to figure out exactly what terms on the front end you can convert, that you can scale into and maximize to get to the point where Google is really a worthwhile channel, right? So if you find the terms that should be converting aren't, just leave them be for a little bit. Get to new areas that you can scale into. Make your money from those areas and then go back to those once you have some level of sustainability from the platform. Next is going to be lumping everything together on Google. One of the biggest mistakes we see when people set up their own account, or even they have a really bad agency that doesn't actually know Google as a channel, is they lump all the targeting together. And the reason why this is such a bad idea is because Google does not work like Facebook. Facebook generally, when something works, it'll scale into that and it'll push the budget into that. Google does not do that. If you have, let's say, 100 keywords in a campaign or 10 keywords, whatever it is, just because one of the keywords is doing amazing or having a high ROI does not mean Google will push the budget there. You'll actually find it'll spread it out pretty evenly, or sometimes it just has a mind of its own. It'll put the budget wherever it thinks it should put that budget instead of what's actually working. So the biggest thing we always talk about is dividing and conquering, really segmenting out what should work. With that segmentation, you're generally going to have dedicated budgets to the individual type of targeting. And that way you can't let really Google make those decisions for you. You have different campaigns with their own segmented budget and segmented targeting, and then you can cater the budget towards what's working best and make sure to turn on and off things that aren't working, right? So best thing you can do when you're doing Google ads is really take control. Don't give too much trust to Google and make sure you have segmentation in the account builds. That way you're really controlling where the money goes. The last thing is thinking that Google's like Facebook. We just talked about this a little bit in that last topic, but the problem is with Google and Facebook, Google's never had as strong of an algorithm as Facebook. If you're on Facebook and you set up, let's say, a broad-based campaign or Advantage Plus campaign and you have amazing creatives, generally it's going to scale right. It's going to find the targeting that works and it's going to scale it into that. Google just does not work like that. You know, they've gotten a lot better over time. For example, like the PMAXs and the shopping campaigns, they'll play that game a little bit. You kind of have to play in between strategies when it comes to Google to Facebook, but they're just not going to do what Facebook's done, which is just carry great creatives and make it happen. You have to have some level of control there, right? So if you trust Google too much, just like you trust Facebook, you're usually going to burn budget. It's usually going to be unproductive time too, right? You're going to lose money and time, which you want to avoid. So when it comes to Google, you have to treat it like a totally different platform. There's different ways you're going to control the campaigns. There's different ways you're going to build them. You have to have different strategies when it comes to the platform, which we talk about. You can learn those different strategies from our channel right in the content we put out. But the biggest thing to make sure of is if you're going to put money to Google, you have to treat it like a totally different entity. You cannot assume it's going to do the same thing as Facebook or you're going to lose money. Thanks for watching. I hope you got a high level of value out of this. Like I said, this is a little bit different of a video that we did this time, really talking about what to avoid. If there's anything specific that you've learned when it comes to Google Ads or something you're having a hard time with, make sure to throw it in the comments. I'll happily respond myself and give you some advice. But thanks again for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.